While we are waiting for The Matrix 4: Resurrections, I suggest we recall the events of the first film and look at them from an unusual point of view. Let us pay attention to the psychological pressure that Neo was subjected to throughout the film. This will give us a new appreciation of this character and his fate. So Neo has been looking for a long time to have a meeting with a reputable hacker named Morpheus, and then, unexpectedly, Morpheus himself reaches out to Neo and offers to meet him. It is clear that the appearance of such authoritative figures as Morpheus and Trinity in Neo's life is an extremely important event for him. Because of this, Neo is highly agitated and thus is vulnerable to psychological manipulation. This allows Morpheus's agents to use a series of psychological tricks to get what they want from Neo. During the first meeting at the club, Trinity stays very close to Neo, which makes him feel embarrassed. She violates his personal boundaries and uses her sexuality, and Neo cannot contradict her, as he is afraid of missing his chance. Then Morpheus calls, and from the first minute of the conversation, he puts psychological pressure on Neo, telling him that he is of great importance.
I've been looking for you, Neo.
They've underestimated how important you are. You are the one, Neo. I've spent my entire life looking for you.
Not a bad psychological attack, is it? It would be as if your favorite musician suddenly called you and started convincing you that you played better than anyone else. But the most important question that Neo for some reason does not ask is, if I am the chosen one, then chosen by whom, and for what purpose? In the second meeting, Trinity and Switch are no longer so friendly and use light intimidation, playing good cop and bad cop. Switch tests Neo for obedience.
Take off your shirt.
What?
Right now, there's only one rule. Our way or the highway.
Neo shows that he has no intention of obeying, and then Trinity says that Neo must trust her. Why? Simply because she can show him something he hasn't seen yet. A strange argument, but it was enough for Neo to obey. Morpheus during the meeting is emphatically friendly, attentive, and constantly flattering to Neo.
It's an honor to meet you.
No, the honor is mine.
You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he is expecting to wake up.
You're here because you know something.
Our protagonist is methodically indoctrinated to believe that he is different, he is special. He is the only one who feels that the world is not all right.
You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world.
It would be naive to think that after all this manipulation, Neo makes a free choice. No, his choice is conditioned by the pressure of authority and the fear of losing his dignity in the eyes of Morpheus, by the fear of not living up to other people's expectations. And of course, it is caused by the fear of missing out on a supposed benefit, the secret knowledge that Morpheus alludes to. Perhaps the most sensible thing a person could do in such a situation is to flip a coin.
You take the blue pill, the story ends. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland.
The desert of the real, Morpheus calls Wonderland, blatantly misleading Neo. Morpheus is silent about the fact that if Neo takes the red pill, all his former life will be lost. Moreover, Morpheus's entire team knows that Neo is doomed to die. During the first shots of the film, we hear Cypher say to Trinity,
We're gonna kill him. You understand that?
but they do what Morpheus needs them to do, as he has some sacred knowledge, a belief. After taking the red pill, Neo finds himself in the confined space of the ship, from which there is no exit, with a new mentor whom he must now obey. The recruitment is complete. Then, Morpheus tells Neo about the so-called real world. The important thing here is that Neo is forced to believe his mentor's word. Everything we learn, together with the main character, about the situation on the planet, about the war with the machines, about the Matrix, it is only Morpheus's story, and a sober-minded person has every right to doubt it. After all, Morpheus demonstrates reality to Neo in a simulation program. One wonders, couldn't this picture of reality also be simulated? But lest Neo ask for proof that this is really the case, Morpheus says,
For the longest time, I wouldn't believe it, and then I saw the fields with my own eyes.
Neo's response can no longer be to ask Morpheus to show him the desert of the real, to see it for himself, because then he would be questioning Morpheus's authority and would look foolish. Of course, some viewers will say, but we were shown that Neo himself saw the human pods when he was freed. The answer is found in Morpheus's words.
Why my eyes, sir?
You've never used them before.
This means that what Neo saw has no factual validity. It could be a vision caused by the effects of the red pill and the connected equipment.
Electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
Also, if Neo had actually seen the capsules, he would not have shouted,
I don't believe it.
in response to Morpheus's words. The motif of belief is one of the main motifs of the film. Moreover, it is precisely around Morpheus's belief that all the events of the film revolve. Morpheus leads the people where his faith points, and his followers do whatever he says, because they have no choice. By the end of the story, all the characters must be convinced that their leader was right. The next step in a recruit's training is to identify the external enemy.
The Matrix is a system, Neo. That system is our enemy. These people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy.
As we can see, Morpheus acts according to the principle, the end justifies the means. The death of people who are not ready to leave the Matrix is quite acceptable for him, and later, Neo will act according to the same principle. Saving Morpheus, he and Trinity will be killing ordinary people.
If you are not one of us, you are one of them.
This rigid division into us and them is very important, and later, I will show what type of consciousness it corresponds to. The Oracle is another authority who is supposed to influence the self-awareness of Neo. Her behavior is the culmination of the moral pressure on our protagonist. At first, she is very friendly to Neo.
You're cuter than I thought.
Then she informs him that he is not the one,
I'm not the one.
Sorry, kid.
and shows that she is disappointed, censuring him for his indecision.
You got the gift, but it looks like you're waiting for something.
But as soon as Neo breathes a sigh of relief, he is now free from the responsibility of saving mankind. Then she puts an even greater moral burden on him. She puts before him the choice of either dying for his mentor or accepting the burden of guilt for his death.
One of you is going to die. Which one will be up to you.
Truly, this is fascinating. To methodically condition and prod someone so that at a certain point, they are ready to sacrifice their lives. Saving humanity doesn't necessarily mean the hero's death, does it? But now the stakes are raised to the maximum, and this is the end point of Neo's training, his willingness to go to his death. And then, in my opinion, there is an outright mockery of the man.
Don't worry about it. Here, take a cookie.
It remains a mystery to us how the programmer and hacker could believe in the prophetic gift of the program. After all, it is obvious that if she prophesies about those events which take place inside the Matrix, it most likely means that she simply has access to all necessary information. And if any event in the Matrix suddenly coincided with the Oracle's prediction, it means that most likely it was planned beforehand. Morpheus and the Oracle's efforts bear fruit. Neo is fully conditioned.
Because I believe in something.
After the agents capture Morpheus, Neo volunteers to rescue him.
The Oracle. She told me this would happen, that I would have to make a choice.
After all the manipulation of his mind, he believed, and is now willing to go to his death for his mentor. Neo noticed that the Oracle's words coincided with what happened to Morpheus, but it never occurred to him that this was all part of the plan and part of his testing. Nor did this occur to Trinity, to whom the Oracle had predicted that she would fall in love with the Chosen One. Perhaps even Morpheus was a victim of the Oracle's manipulation. After all, it was at her behest that he sought the Chosen One.
What did she tell you?
That I would find the one.
However, our task now is not to construct another film theory, but to draw attention to the methods used by the leaders with respect to their adherents, and to the completely uncritical attitude of the adherents themselves toward what they are indoctrinated to believe. If in Neo's former life his direct access to reality was blocked by the Matrix, then in his new life his access to reality is limited by the ideology of Morpheus. Such consciousness, which does not interact with reality directly, but receives its description from an unconditional authority, I will conventionally call Sectarian Consciousness. And in the Morpheus group, we see many signs that coincide with those of a sect. The presence of a charismatic leader, a creed based on the leader's religious revelation. Morpheus has it as a belief in the Chosen One. Recruitment using psychological manipulation, concealment of true goals. Thus, Morpheus tells of a rule.
We never free a mind once it's reached a certain age.
But this contradicts his own plan to free people from the Matrix, which means we can doubt that this was his true purpose. alienation of the individual from the outside world and his former social connections, blind obedience to the leader, psychological pressure, rigid division into insiders and outsiders, proclamation of the outside world as evil, use of ordinary group members to commit crimes. We have come very close to calling Neo by his real name. But first I will give the most important fact from the film, which will be my main argument. At the beginning of the film, Neo opens Baudrillard's book Simulacra and Simulation. In this book, Baudrillard describes the system of modern cultural society and says that terrorism would be the only means of revealing methods of total control if the system did not also assimilate it by turning it into one of the simulacra. For example, when the government itself produces terrorist attacks to confirm the presence of power in society. The Wachowskis in this trilogy illustrate this thought of Baudrillard and show how the system has assimilated terrorism into itself. That is, it has made it merely a means of self-checking for errors. Thus, Neo is the terrorist. And Morpheus's group is a terrorist group. Morpheus, by the way, was called a terrorist at the beginning of the movie.
Bringing a known terrorist to justice.
All of Neo's training was focused on making him see the world as Morpheus sees it, to see the enemy in everyone who does not belong to his group, to be willing to die for the ideas of a leader. It is important to understand the difference between the role of the leader and the role of the hero. Morpheus is the leader of the resistance. He is the one who unites the people around himself and leads them to the goal. And a leader cannot sacrifice himself because then his life's work would die. That's why leaders need heroes who are willing to make sacrifices for their cause. Neo is such a hero. People like Neo are a godsend for leaders who carry out their plans. You might say, but Morpheus sacrificed himself for Neo. In fact, he didn't. What looked like a self-sacrifice was in fact either a pre-planned event or a completely irresponsible act. And here's why. Only Morpheus had the access codes to Zion's computer. Morpheus understood that the agents needed him alive, and they would not kill him without getting the codes. And knowing this, Morpheus suddenly decided to stand alone with the agents. Don't you think this is an unnecessarily risky, even suspiciously risky tactic? With his decision, Morpheus jeopardized his entire team, as well as Zion. Did he have the right to risk going right into the hands of the enemy? Certainly not. As I said, a leader cannot put himself in danger. It is another matter if all this was part of Neo's training, a kind of initiation conducted by Morpheus, together with the agents, at the behest of the Oracle. So now we see that the movie The Matrix romanticizes terrorism in a covert way, and also shows us what methods the group leaders use to influence their group members' personalities. But most interestingly, the Wachowskis showed us that the fighters against the system are, in fact, part of the system against which they are fighting. And if we project this onto the Gnostic worldview, of which the Wachowskis are adherents, it means that the Gnostics, while fighting the Demiurge, are in fact the executors of its will. But that is a whole other topic.